White River and Honey Creek coming through to Echo Lake, and the rivers that comes out of Echo Lake too. You can see that it's a beautiful sunny day. The water's nice, slow moving, coming through. About half the water that comes into Echo Lake comes in through the White River, and about half the water in the White River comes out of Geneva Lake. The other half comes from Ore Creek, comes up by creeks from Lake Ivanhoe and from other creeks in the area. You got to figure that there's about, typically, according to the engineers for the city, about 20,000 gallons per minute that are rolling through here. Looks a little less than that today. But notice that it just does keep coming. The dam impediment, the backup from the dam, when you're canoeing or kayaking, you can feel that about a quarter of a mile downstream from here. But the engineers will tell you that there actually is some impact, probably about as far up as you can see here on the river and from this shot. Most of the White River has a nice white gravel bottom. I've always wanted to believe they called it the White River because it has a white gravel bottom. Right here on the Highway JS bridge, Chestnut Street, used to be Highway 11. In Old Voree, there's the old Voree monument. In this area, the bottom is actually sunset stone. Stone that was cut and somehow dropped into the river. I don't really understand why or how, but from this section for about half a mile up, what you're really getting on the bottom is this really, really nice building stone, flat stones. It's very, very nice. The river is, even today, fairly clear. I don't know that the video is picking it up, but you can see the bottom pretty well. It's a nice clear moving water. There is sediment here. Some of the water that comes into this river comes through from fields. There are all sorts of little backfield cuts that drain the water off the fields down into the river. Again, if you canoe or kayak between Lake Geneva and Burlington, you see those on a regular basis. There's one or two more downstream from here, over by the airport and those sorts of places. But again, the water looks pretty nice. I don't know that I'd want to drink it, but certainly good for recreation. And again, just keeps coming. It doesn't stop. Only half of it comes out of Geneva Lake. The rest of it is from other local creeks, regional creeks that feed into the White River. Couple nice little shots here. We're going to move over to Honey Creek now. Looking upstream north on Honey Creek. Before we were looking upstream south on the White River. I really thought that Beaneman Road would have less noise on it. So much for that idea. About half the water that comes into Echo Lake, the mill pond at Burlington, comes from Honey Creek. Some of it comes from Honey Creek itself, starting all the way in the Lauderdale Lakes area, and some of it comes from Sugar Creek, which comes in from along the area of Verona and Paradise Hill, Paradise Skiville, the old Paradise Ski Hill area. As you can see, this water is not moving quite as fast and isn't quite as clear because we've come downstream a little bit. We're now into the area that the dam is actually slowing the water up. And that means that instead of moving everything along, the water more sits. This isn't completely stagnant, but this water is not moving as fast as the water was moving over on the White River. That also means that it's starting to drop some of the dirt, some of the sediment, the non-point dirt that comes in from all the fields and everything else in the area. And that's really and truly one of the big problems, both with this area on Honey Creek and in both sections of Echo Lake, is that because of the dam, dirt just gets dropped out of the water. You just can't keep it moving, can't hold it. And it starts to build up. There's a lot of people today will tell you that actually started or was heavily affected by the flooding in 2017. But if you listen to the people in the public hearings about what to do with the mill pond in Burlington, in the meetings that were held in the spring, you heard people talk about the fact that as early as the 1990s, they were, just a second, I gotta talk to a guy. I do want to thank that very nice man for pointing out a better place to take a shot and show some of the problems with the sediment building up in the upper section of Echo Lake, the Echo Mill Pond. As that drops, the soil just builds up, the dirt just builds up. We did hear public comment. You could hear it at the public meetings, in this last spring, that even in the early 1990s, flat bottom canoes drawing 2-3 inches of water were getting hung up in Echo Lake. The lake has been filled for a long time. There are sections of it that are very, very stagnant. There's nothing but dirt, just a little bit of water over the very, very top. Here you can certainly see some of the areas that are sedimented up, that have been built up and aren't very useful for river use. Again, about the same amount of water coming in through this combination of the Sugar and Honey Creeks, coming into and feeding into Echo Lake. Notice that the water just is here and it just keeps coming. It doesn't stop. And yet, Echo Lake doesn't ever really seem to get incredibly full. You have to have a real flood. You have to have lots and lots of rain in order for the level to rise significantly. If you look down along the area of the park on Chestnut Street, you get a little bit of a shot here of. That doesn't flood very much, doesn't flood very often. Where's that water going? It's going over the dam. It's going over that concrete wall, and it's flowing down that last short section of the White River into the Fox River. So whatever water is coming from Honey Creek and the White River is also leaving Echo Lake, leaving the mill pond, Burlington Mill Pond, and heading into the Fox River. And we'll go take a look at that pretty soon. And here we are on the lower section below the railroad tracks of Echo Lake. The entire lake is about 70 acres or so. You can tell where the river does actually run through at some pace. And then you can also tell that there are sections that are just a little more stagnant. That just are pretty much nothing but algae covered sediment buildup. You can tell it's been a couple of nice sunny days. The algae has a very, very nice dark green, healthy look to it. This is about the same size mill pond as West Bend had. In the late 1980s, West Bend was faced with the issue of what to do with their mill pond. And their decision was to take it out. It was a contentious battle. It got nasty in West Bend there for a little while. But their decision was to take it out and to turn it into a very, very large park area. So they took their area, and again, about the same size. Theirs is about 68 acres or so. They took that and turned it into picnic areas, bicycle trails, running paths, nature preserve areas, athletic fields, all sorts of things for the community to be able to actively enjoy and use. And be able to make some purpose for, besides what I heard one person refer to as the largest hydroponic garden in Wisconsin. If you watch the interviews, if you listen to the videos, when they've gone back to West Bend, even the people who were opposed to taking out the dam now, 30 years later, will admit that it looks pretty good. It turned out pretty well, and that it seems to be a good thing for the community to have done it, that it has improved the quality of life in the community because of their access to increased recreational facilities. Burlington parks have had a series of master plans all the way back from the 1980s. Every single one of those master plans has included in it the concept of gaining somehow a large area of parkland for a large use park facility. Here we have about 70 acres that doesn't really do much, and could do so much more. We're now down below the dam for the Burlington Mill Pond, and as you can see, the waters just keep coming. This is all of the water that came through our first video section on the White River, and all of the water that came through on the Honey Creek section that we shot. And if you think about it, that pretty much has to be what happens here. The water just doesn't continue to accumulate in Echo Lake. It passes through. It comes through. And so if you're going to have the White River here, combined White River and Honey Creek, it's going to be about this size. This is how much water is coming into Echo Lake from the White River and Honey Creek. This is how much water is going out of Echo Lake as the White River, soon to join the Fox. We're about 10 feet, the altitude of the water here is about, the water level is about 10 feet less than where we first shot video out on Chestnut Street, JS, Old Highway 11 on the White River. For each mile that the White River comes from Geneva Lake down to Burlington, it drops about 10 feet. Some places it's a little flatter, and you find lots of cutbacks in those areas as the river tries to find its way downhill. But on average, it drops about 10 feet for each mile. And that's true here also for this last mile, from the JS Bridge out at Rivier down to just below the dam here. So there is good potential for water flow. The water will keep moving. The water will not be stagnant. It will continue to flow. It'll come in from the White River, it will come in from Honey Creek, and it will flow through Burlington and then join the Fox. It's a little higher when it's been raining. It's a little lower if we're in a drought situation. If we haven't had any rain for 3 or 4 weeks, the water goes down. If we have rain for 3 or 4 days, the water goes up. You would expect that. Science would tell you that. I'm always a little worried about the people who comment that whenever there's been work done that drew down Echo Lake, their wells went dry. I really don't want to think about the fact that people in Burlington, or in the Burlington area, are tapping their wells into the Echo Lake water. It's really not drinkable. The aquifers in this area flow from west to east, and like most aquifers, they get replenished when it rains, and they drop in level when there's a drought. Most of the work that's been done on Echo Lake has been timed to take advantage of needing to draw out less water. I think it's more circumstance than reality that the water level on Echo is lower at the same time that the aquifer is lower, which actually causes those people's wells and drinking water to be lower. I guess if you had Echo Lake water as your well water, it'd be a whole lot easier to make coffee in the morning. And I don't know that I want to drink it. This would be about the size of the White River once it's combined with Honey Creek, because this is Honey Creek and the White River combined below the Echo Dam. And that's pretty much how all this works. If you like your river a little deeper, a little narrower, this is a shot from the Milwaukee Avenue Bridge towards downtown, towards Bridge Street. It's a little more condensed. Certainly, however you want to design it, it's how you can build it. Within reason, there's only so much water. But it just keeps coming, and it just keeps going. And it's a good river.